Hey guys, welcome to Bat Break. Nick here. I'm joined with a couple of my buddies from the hobby. We're here to talk all things game-used bats. I'm joined by Dan Cleary to my right, Steve Masi to my left. What's going on, guys?
How are you, Nick?
How's
Thanks
it
for having
going?
us.
Great to be here.
Great.
very
Thanks
cool.
for joining us.
This is going to be fun.
It is. Dan, big Red Sox fan. Steve, big Yankees fan. So it's always fun to get these two together.
Keep us separated.
Hopefully we'll play nice today. But we've got some great bats. I think you're going to really enjoy it. We're going to learn a lot and discuss why we love this hobby so much. So to get it started, tell me a little bit, guys. Dan, how you got into this crazy hobby. What's so cool that attracts you to some sticky, dirty, broken pieces of lumber?
Yeah, I grew up out in Massachusetts, outside of Boston, so being a Red Sox fan is in the blood. You
Right.
can't really help it. I moved from Massachusetts to LA in 1999, and that really got me back into baseball as a way to kind of stay in touch with family and friends, and then the Red Sox all of a sudden got really good and started winning World Series.
Spoiled.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And after the 2007 season, I realized how much I loved David Ortiz. And I was watching a game and I thought, it'd be really cool to have a bat from this guy. Is that even possible? How is that? I don't even know if that's doable. So I went on eBay and realized, this is very doable. There's
Right.
quite a bit.
Mhm.
And so my first bat was a 2007 David Ortiz bat. And then it kind of became, I want to collect Red Sox season, World Series season Red Sox bats.
Mhm.
And then it became, how do I start? I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't
Right.
even know who was on those teams.
Right.
And so it led me down the rabbit hole of Googling and researching and meeting people like you guys. And that's kind of how I got started.
That's awesome. It's amazing how much just searching online, Googling, how much is out there for free that you can learn,
Well, it's a wealth of
kind of trial
information,
by error.
for
How
sure.
about you, Steve? How'd you get into it? How long you been into collecting bats?
I've been actively collecting bats. Pretty sure it was 1997. However, I got the bug. Well, it started in 1981. I was a very young child. I was at Yankee Stadium.
Mhm.
I'm from about 65 miles northwest of New York City. We'd go maybe once a year, twice a year, watching batting practice, standing on the rail, and a gentleman in a suit came over to me and handed me a bat.
Nice.
Aurelio Rodriguez.
Mm.
Aurelio Rodriguez. I still own that.
Still have
Still
it.
have, absolutely. And that sat at the house for years. Then I eventually moved to Los Angeles in 1994. And about 1997, I was just at a newsstand where I lived in Santa Monica and looking at sports magazines, and there was this paper there called Sports Collector's Digest.
Yep.
And I was like, what's this?
Yeah.
And I start flipping through that, and I see an ad for a guy named John Tauby who's selling game-used bats. And I was like, that's a thing? I had no idea.
I thought you were the only one that
Yeah,
had
Yeah.
that was.
So I called John, and this was back in the day when, I think John had a job, and he would call you back, he'd leave a
It was just a
message.
side job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I said, luckily I called the right guy, because
Right.
I didn't know
Could have been.
anything.
Right.
And I said, hey, I'm looking for a Don Mattingly bat. And he was like, okay, I'll help you out. And that was the first bat that I ever purchased, which I still own. And then it's been.
Who is John, for those of you that out there that maybe haven't heard that name before and don't know who he is?
John Tauby, JT Sports. He's sort of the bat guru, if you will.
Yeah.
Agreed, right? He's
Oh, yeah.
sort of the guy with the most amount of knowledge.
Mhm.
And he's always been great with me and super fair. And
Lead authenticator.
yeah, lead
PSA.
authenticator for PSA. Real honest guy, real straight shooter, and he's been my guy for 22 years now.
Right.
And I sort of, whenever I have a question, what do you think? He's the first call I make.
Right.
So.
And still active. Still.
Oh God,
Same job. And,
Oh,
all these
100%.
years
Yeah,
later.
for sure.
Yeah.
How about you,
speaking
Nick?
of
Sorry.
speaking of Sports Collectors Digest, I bought this Paul Molitor bat right here out of one of their auctions in '93, I believe it was.
And that was your first.
94.
That was your first one.
It was my first one, or one of my better first ones. I was 12 years old at the time, and I don't remember the exact moment, but I used to hit this batting cage in Glendale, California, when I was playing high school baseball or junior high back then, and they had a card shop attached to it. And the guy, Raul, who ran the card shop, had a bat rack behind the counter of game-used bats, and he had a connection with the Dodgers, Bat Boys, so he would cycle them through during the season. So every time I went to hit, there was new bats up there, and I'm like, this is so cool. I'm sitting here, why am I spending $20 on a box of baseball cards or a few packs when there's a Mike Piazza bat up there, or whoever it may be. So I started small, buying like whatever I could afford, $40 for like a Jose Offerman bat that's broken in half, or Carlos Hernandez.
Yeah, but how cool is that when you're 12?
Right, and it was awesome. And just, I believe that's when I just saw it when you see it in person, and that was during the baseball card boom, and everyone was spending ungodly amounts of money on cards, and I was one of them as well. But I don't know if it was intuitive or what, at a young age, I was like, this is just way cooler, as opposed to, everyone has that Griffey 89 Upper Deck, but how many have a Griffey bat, or whoever it may be. Gwynn was my favorite player, Tony Gwynn. His bats were way out of my price range at that time, which was probably selling for about $300 then, which was way out of my price range. And now
you would love to go back to those days.
Yeah, now they're selling for 10 times that.
Yep.
Funny story on that. Now that I remember being in the Padres team store. So some teams would sell them in their team store in the early '90s with my parents.
Well, Cincinnati started that in the 70s.
In the '70s,
Really?
right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
They were the first to do it, right?
And if you can still find those bats, and they carry
Yeah, 'cause
quite
they
a
have
premium.
the tape on the handle.
Literally, they put a piece of
Oh, and wrote what it
And
was.
wrote
or-
what date it came out, the date it cracked. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was in the Padres team for the early '90s with my family, and they had a barrel of broken bats, and I'm just pulling them out, looking as a little kid. And they had a Tony Gwynn. It probably looked just like this one. This is a 1991, and it had a price tag on there that was kind of faded, and it looked like $50, and that was a lot. We were going back and forth. I'm begging my parents for it, and they're like, I don't know, $50 for a broken bat, that's crazy. And I think I almost convinced him to buy it. We're getting ready to walk to the register, and then my dad looked closer, and there was a 1 in front of it, and it was $150, and they couldn't put it back fast enough. They're like, no way, we're out of here. Here's a hat, and that
Here's a hat, kids.
That bat's worth $3,000-$4,000 today, possibly.
So we're saying it would have been a good investment.
It would have been a good investment.
Who
I know
knew?
guys in the early '80s buying from the Padres team stores Gwynn bats for $20, rookie Gwynn
crazy.
bats.
I have a friend who was buying Yaz bats from Yaz for like $100 a pop.
Right, from Yaz.
Yeah, from Yaz. In his
direct
garage, as many as you wanted to take.
And that's the beauty of before it became mainstream. These bats would just get thrown away when they were broken. The bat boys had access to this stuff, and they would barter, trade them with fans for whatever, balls, autographs, money. But most of them got thrown away.
Yeah.
And that's why when you see some of these vintage bats that Steve has, it's just incredible that they've survived and in that kind of condition, right?
Oh, for sure. And I also feel like if a lot of them didn't go in the trash, they probably wouldn't be as valuable as they are now.
Right.
Which is a good and
That's
a
a
bad
good point.
thing, because it would be great if
More were available.
and cheaper.
Right. But it's just like the baseball cards all got thrown away.
Of course, that's
why
why
the demand,
absolutely.
Putting the bike spokes.
to supply. Right. So why don't you talk a little bit, guys, about the theme of your collection today? Obviously, I'm sure it's evolved quite a bit since when we first started buying whatever we could get our hands on. But Dan, what do you collect today?
So, it started with just getting World Series season Red Sox bats. Mm-hmm. So 2004, 2007 at the time. Now there's been 2013, 2018. It's been a good,
we get it.
10 years. Those are going good. But then it just became, how many Ortiz can I possibly get? Because he's my favorite guy. So at a certain point, I was up to about 50 Ortiz bats.
Was it all Ortiz at this point? Or
no, it was Ortiz. It was Pedroia. At the beginning, I don't know if you guys did this too, but it became whatever is available, I'm going to buy it. Mm. So any Red Sox bat I found from like the 2000s on, that was my thing.
And then you sort of get a little more discerning.
And then you start realizing, this wasn't used by this guy, and this one is fake, and you start learning the hard way.
Right.
But that's part of the learning curve, I feel like, is buying things you don't need and buying bad stuff.
Right.
So then let's be clear, we don't need any of this.
No. Speak for yourself. I mean, this is happy. You can buy happiness, and it's right here.
And we've all bought, for the younger collectors, we've all bought bad stuff back in the day.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, it used to be kind of the Wild West. It's a lot more organized today.
I think with the modern stuff now, especially with the authentication and guys selling their own stuff
and quality of photographs, so you
can
find
high definition photography makes it a lot easier.
Right.
So so then it just became now I collect still those same seasons because I'm not fully finished getting my World Series year accurate bats. So that's an ongoing
Who are you missing?
game. I'm missing like Bobby Kelty from 2007 is the only guy. From 2004, I'm missing like Dave McCarty and Sandy Martinez and people that you don't even know their names really.
Right.
From
I'm missing
the Yankees.
I'm missing a couple 98 to 2000 Yankees.
Of course.
The
so now I just collect guys that I like, and so Bogarts and Mookie Betts until he gets traded in a month or so.
Yeah. What do you
so
have here? What do
so
you have
here
in
I
front of
have
you?
a. This might be my favorite bat, probably. It's a 2013 David Ortiz home run bat. First year they used the lizard skin, which is really cool.
Look how it wore off on there.
Yeah,
I mean,
just he
Lot
grips
of
it pretty
use,
hard.
Yeah. I feel like nowadays they would swap that out if it was
You would
worn
think,
like that.
but his bats are. He used to get them filthy, and there's tons of cleat marks and tons of ball marks, and as much tar as you could probably put on a bat. I mean, this is kind of
as good as
for
it
Ortiz
gets.
collectors a
Right.
pretty perfect Ortiz bat.
Right.
Barely cracked. 2013 stamped, but I think this is career 429. I think.
Home run.
So and from World Series season, World Series MVP.
And we'll get into the photo matching and
Yeah.
pinpointing a home run and the significance it has, as well as some of the characteristics that you mentioned that buried over Ortiz's career.
Yep. And then I also brought a 2018 Mookie Betts bat. This is a MVP season. They also won the World Series, and this is actually a Grand Slam bat versus the Yankees.
Nice.
Sorry, Steve.
In New York or Boston?
In New York.
In New York.
Wait, no, it was in Boston.
Nice.
April in Boston.
So cool to think that bat was launched the ball over the Green Monster.
It's
you know,
great.
And made the whole stadium go crazy.
Oh, of course. And it's an axe handle bat, which are new since 2015, I think.
Yeah, really, because I got to admit, today was the first time I've ever actually handled an axe handle.
It's pretty. It feels good.
Very interesting. Yeah, it doesn't feel weird.
Makes me
at
feel
all.
like I could actually be an athlete.
Oh, really?
No, it does. It's amazing it wasn't invented sooner.
Yeah.
But really a neat feel to it. Pedroia was the first guy to swing those?
For the Red Sox, But this bat I bought on Red Sox auctions, which is getting more and more popular. Teams selling stuff on their auctions, and I matched it to a Grand Slam, and
that's a Victus brand.
Victus,
bat.
yep. And then the third one right here is 2008 Dustin Pedroia, another MVP season, and this one is authenticated to the ALDS versus the. Oh my God, who they playing the ALDS? I forgot actually.
Indians? Or
No.
That is filthy.
Yeah, that's a good one. But he really
Motus
cakes on that motor, and we'll show close-ups of it.
That's crazy.
Great part, which I noticed right away on this bat, was you could see the grooves on his fingers. This is called the Moto stick here on the lower handle, where you could literally see where Dustin gripped this bat, and the sticky, soft tar at the time would,
almost became like clay.
Yeah,
in a
it's
way.
unbelievable. I mean, this thing's just filthy. It's a maple M9.
Yep.
Awesome bat.
But it's hard to find authenticated playoff bats.
Right.
So, and MVP season. So we'll start
Very
with those.
cool.
Yeah.
Steve, how about you? Theme of your collection? Where I know it's evolved and changed a little bit over the years.
It has. It started out, I started in '97, and then the Yankees went on that run.
Right.
So it really, for the first 10 years or so, was super focused on 98 to 2000 Yankees. Like I was trying to knock off a year appropriate bat for every position player on that team.
Why not 96 when it kind of started?
Because, I started in '97 and I wanted to just sort of not get in over my head. Listen, I will pick off 96 bats when they come my way.
Right.
But I was just like, I need to.
But 3 straight seasons is enough to get keep you busy.
Yeah, I needed it. And I had read somewhere, like, gotta get a focus, because if you get all over the place, and we all do, like I did, I had some jerseys and some gloves, and eventually I go, okay, I'm a bat collector. I need to stick the.
If you're not focused,
so it started out with those.
madness.
Started out with those guys, and then I always loved Posada bats because as his career went on, they just got filthier.
Right.
And
like this one.
like this. Yeah, this is later on. This is like 2010 when he would really get the flame treatment, super heavy. You could really see the grain, and the pine tar would just kind of get absurd. I mean, that's
Look at that.
Clumps, clumps and clumps.
Yeah,
grass.
And and he never used batting gloves, so obviously the finger marks in here, and he would bang the hell out of his cleats.
So is it taped underneath there?
Yeah,
You can't even tell.
You can't even tell. The crisscross tape is covered. You could sort of see it under there.
Yeah.
And he was a big. He liked to bang his cleats a lot, so you should always, on a good Posada bat, there should be cleat marks on the front barrel of the bat. Switch hitter, so it's all over. But got into Posada stuff, and then some fellow collectors had sort of put the vintage bug in my ear. I wish they would have done that 10 years sooner.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I need to focus. if I'm going to get into vintage, I just can't be all over the place. So I decided 3,000 hit guys would be a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing full well there were some that were well out of my reach. You know, the Ty Cobbs and the Honus Wagners and the Eddie Collins of the world and Napoleon Lajoies are probably never going to happen.
I had a couple Napoleon bats if you want.
Oh, fantastic.
Different Napoleon.
So yeah, I just moved into Hall of Famers with a real focus on 3,000 hit guys.
Right. Highest quality you could find.
The best I could. I always try to I try to be as discerning as the wallet allows.
Right.
Like I try to stick to 9s and GU graded bats, GU 9s and higher.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of where I'm at. 9s, 9.5s, 10s.
So how do you tell, not to get too sidetracked, but if you have X amount of dollars, you could put in a one phenomenal Mays bat, or with that money, you could get two pretty good, a Mays and a Brett or something. Do you go all in on the nice Mays, or do you split it up to fill your collection?
I try to go all in on the best bat that I can get,
Right.
and then pick off the next one
When it's
down the road.
right.
And if something's, sometimes, for instance, this Mays bat came along, and I just had to figure out how to make it happen.
Right.
Like it's a later career Mays.
Mm-hmm.
Often with the vintage stuff or with anybody, I find the earlier career stuff generally carries more value.
Mm-hmm.
But with a lot, with a lot of guys like Mays, he started with the tar later on.
Mm-hmm.
Mays, Aaron, Brett,
Mm-hmm.
and those bats just, to me, they're cooler. They have more eye appeal, and I would rather have this bat. No, don't get me wrong. I'm never going to turn my nose up at a 50s era
Right.
Mays bat,
Right.
but this to me just looks great, and I had to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How long have you had that one for?
A couple of years now. So 1972. It's got an interesting story. Came from a pitcher who pitched in the National League for 10 years, and Willie had borrowed some golf shoes from him and never given them back. And he'd see him.
They were bright yellow.
And,
You
and
said,
he would say, "Hey, Willie, where are my shoes?" So eventually Willie gave him a couple of bats and a pair of his spikes, and I was able to get the bat directly from that guy. So
Now, did he write a letter with the bat stating how he got it?
he wrote a detailed letter about the shoes,
Mm-hmm.
how it all went down, and then I sent it off to John Talby to get the blessing.
Right.
And it's
And that's
Great-
what's so
great
cool. I mean, there's many cool aspects of the hobby, but the story behind that. I mean, when our collections and people come look at it, our bats hanging on the wall at our house, literally probably every bat has a story to it. Where you could, someone told me a long time ago, when you're buying a piece, if you can't talk about it for 5 minutes, then it's replaceable and move on to something that you can, like this. I mean, it's unbelievable. The provenance, the story is so cool. Then obviously the character of the bat, the pine tar. And for those that don't know, finding a Mays with that amount of tar is not easy to find.
Yeah, he started doing that later in his career.
Right.
But yeah, that's a lot of tar.
Yes. And
Speaking of tar.
Speaking of tar,
Speaking of tar, this is a late 80s George Brett. I think this one is pinpoint 87, 88. Obviously, if you're into pine tar, you can kind of see that I am. And 3,000 hit guys, you got to have a George Brett, right? So I sort of just waited it out until I could find one that was, I guess, nasty.
checked all the boxes.
Nasty enough.
Right.
It's got the perfect Brett tar up here,
Mm-hmm.
and then he would transfer it down here. You often see sort of a clean band in the middle.
Right.
It says Lou on the knob,
Mm-hmm.
which is a childhood nickname. So often on Brett bats, you'll either see a number 5, the letters GB, and then the number 5 underneath it, and sometimes you'll see where it says Lou.
Right. His nickname for watching Looney Tunes
Looney
all
Tunes,
the time.
yes.
Is that what it was?
Yeah,
his brother, they called him Looney
Lou.
Tunes. Yep.
And you'd actually see his signature change later in his career. It said George Lou Brett.
The 90s bats on the
Right.
barrel, instead of saying George Brett, they say George Lou Brett.
Mm-hmm.
And the 90s Brett bats, if you think this has a lot of tar,
Yeah.
you should see some of those 90s bats as just caked.
Yeah. All the way up the barrel.
Yeah, it's insane. We were talking about this earlier, that you'll often find, not often, you don't find a lot of 70s era Brett bats.
Right.
So when you find them, you kind of want them.
Mhm.
However,
Right.
he didn't really get into the tar yet, and they don't have much tar, and they don't. In my mind, they don't carry the premium that you would think that a 70s era Brett bat should carry, which means they're probably undervalued. And if you
Absolutely.
find one, you should probably.
Right. Even early
Find a way to
80s when
pick.
they were winning,
It's
best third baseman in baseball, or at least in the American League.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about late 80s, I'd say.
Even if you see the pine, if you watch tape of the pine tars in it, by today's standards,
Right.
that bat does not have that much tar.
No, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
This has probably more than that bat, or about.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So,
Which is, yeah.
but the tar, obviously, when you're talking about a Brett bat, the tar seems to carry the premium.
Yeah, tar is always going to be just in huge demand by collectors.
Eye appeal.
I mean,
It comes down to eye appeal.
Right.
It looks cool hanging on the wall.
And if you get a fresh one, that smell.
The other
You know,
smell,
if you have
there's
one
no-
from the same season, it's nothing better.
I can tell you
still
that
sticky.
I had this bat in a tube from the day I got it, right after the 2010 season.
Mhm.
It was still sticky in 2012
Yep.
Unbelievable.
because it was in the tubes and
Right.
air was getting in there.
And
if
And
you
there's
would
so
pull it-
much it just can't dry.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you have here?
Yeah, another pine tar guy is Wade Boggs, which we have here. I collect I've kind of been all over the place. I collected star players early on. Then I went to Tony Gwynn, my favorite player, and went like you did with Ortiz, Dan, kind of went all in on Gwynn. And then one day I just said to myself, you know what? I can't, if a buddy's over, I can't just show him 20 Tony Gwynn bats and he's going to think,
Well, you
know,
can.
it might be, it's like, and then if something happened and I needed to sell my collection to pay for my kids' college tuition, or whatever it may be, trying to unload 20 players in 20 bats of one player at the same time is tough to do as far as it affects the market value, obviously. So now I'm more focused, Hall of Famers between the 70s and 90s. That was kind of my era. I grew up. I really like the 3,000 hit guys. In my opinion, those were the purest hitters, a lot of them. So I try to find the highest quality from that era. So some overlap there with Steve and Wade Boggs, obviously being one of those guys. A lot of pine tars you could see. This is from his Yankees era. What's cool about this is he signed it 96 Go Yankees, which obviously was a big year for any Yankees fan. Now Boggs and Tony Gwynn, like this Gwynn bat here, these guys were such good hitters that they would literally all the contact on the bat would be right here.
Small
just
surface area, and
a
that's
concentrated area
crushed with use.
on the right
That's a nice
barrel.
mark right there.
And you see these, we could get into it, I'm sure, later, but the blue ink transfers from the Rawlings baseballs. But Boggs, Gwynn, this is a Tony Gwynn bat. I mean, these guys, it's unbelievable. You look at the other side of the barrel, and there's literally not a single ball mark. And these guys are facing 90 plus mile per hour hitting or pitching. This Gwynn bat is just incredible when people see his bats for the first time, how small his bats were. 32.5 inches, 31 ounces. And it's like
It feels like a kid's bat. It really does.
Yeah, him and Musial is another guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny little bats.
Tiny bats. This bat was cool, and I'm sure we'll touch on it. I own this bat. I found it on Craigslist. It's probably my favorite bat, a random find. Owned it for probably 5 years, and then eventually photo matched it. I found a photo of Tony holding the bat on the cover of a Beckett magazine.
It's crazy.
In 1991, and then found additional photos of him using the bat early in the season. He probably got 12 to 15 hits with this bat during the prime of his career. So a really neat piece, and it just needle in the haystack. You never know what you're going to unravel when you own it, then we all dig in and do research and try to kind of trace our set.
And you were talking about how it had tape on it at one point.
Right.
And which made it harder to
The
pinpoint.
handle was taped on the Beckett photo. So I didn't even think to look at it as it might be my bat. And I always thought, man, that's a cool bat he's holding. I'd like to find it one day. Literally, it was in
your
my
house.
closet. So it's rare when a player removes tape from their handle that he actually continued to use that bat. Usually it means it was given to someone else more times than not, or it was used in BP or something. But in this instance, I found photos of him using this particular bat with the tape removed. So it was an oddity in that regard. So Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs, Paul Molitor, like I said, one of the first bats I owned. Also, this bat I owned for probably 15 years before I actually found a photo of Paul in 1991 or 92 using this bat. Actually, a perfect shot on Getty Images of the break. You can see it's got a pretty substantial crack here, and he's fallen through on the swing. And it's cracked.
Oh, you can see the break.
You can see the break. The
that's
fact
great.
that a photographer captured that
You see those every now and then.
moment, and then that I had the bat is amazing.
Look
So
at
that's and you see the blue ink here on from the Rawlings baseball. So a ton of character. For those younger collectors or baseball fans who don't know, this is a Cooper bat, a Canadian company. It had the really colorful
big in the 90s.
rings, big in the 90s,
late 80s,
late 80s. Really cool. I really like these bats. They went out of business, so they're no longer producing these. But
And he was swinging these exclusively for a while there.
yeah, and Brewer and in the Blue Jays when he won the World Series. So this was a Paul Molitor bat, a Cooper branded bat that's no longer around, which is another cool part of the hobby. A lot of these brands come and go. Marucci, Victus being some of the newer manufacturers in the game. Louisville, Slugger, and Adirondack Rawlings being some of the staples. So it's cool to see the lineage and the heritage of how bats have evolved over the past 100 years and have been used in the national pastime, which is neat. So thanks, guys, for giving us some insight on your collecting things,
this
how
was
long
great.
you've been
Thank
at
you.
it. We're going to follow up with some of our favorite bats in our collection, what we're currently looking for, and what makes them so unique, some of these one-of-a-kind items that we have.
Awesome. Thank you. This was great.
Thanks.
Awesome.